This week marks the second year anniversary of my 1/24 scale GN15 model railroad. I will go over how I started the railway, the basic track plan, my rolling stock so far, the electronics under the layout, the people, and the future projects I have envisioned for the layout. My model railroad represents a fictional Italian fishing village and vineyard set in the 1930s. The railway was started back in November 7, 2020, as a project to relieve boredom during COVID lockdown. I purchased a flush door that's normally made for closets and used that as the basis for my model railroad, put it on some shelf brackets and attached it to the wall, and began laying down the track as carefully as I could, and then mocking it up with a lot of foam core buildings. The track plan is simple. It is point to point. Here is one end, which is the harbor yard. It's just one turnout, which can accommodate passenger trains and the occasional freight. And there is a siding that goes into what I call the Bertoldi wine, vinegar, and olive oil factory, which is this building and this building. So trains go in this building. Usually they back into it, and there's a sensor right here, which eventually will get concealed in a lamp, but it turns red once the infrared beam is cut. So I can then know when to stop. So now the trains travel underneath this building, number 106, and pass through. And this is the area where there's a turntable that eventually will get scenicked, and there's a little siding there to allow trains to pass each other. Then it curves around and then goes along this narrow module that is only 12 inches deep. The siding allows trains to pass each other. There's the bridge, and a vehicle waiting its turn to cross. Of course, this is GN15, which means that the track gauge is HO gauge track to represent a narrow industrial railroad. It then proceeds, crosses a bridge, and then enters another bridge, which is a footbridge. And that's the track plan. Eventually, the track will turn and continue on to a vineyard. The model railroad is 57 inches high, so that it is eye level for me. Granted, it might be a little too tall for other members of the family, but since I'm the one that operates it and I find 57 inches from the ground is a nice way to view the model railroad. And it allows me to work underneath the model railroad in a little bit more comfort. It's still a little awkward though. The rolling stock of the railroad is noticeably small at the time being because I've been focusing on scenery. But I will walk you through the equipment that I have right now. First off is engine number 8. It's a small scratch build, freelance designed locomotive. It is representing an industrial switcher. It is DCC controlled, which means that I don't have to cut blocks. I can control it from either a handset that comes with the DCC system or my telephone using JMRI, because I have a computer connection from the train to the computer to Wi-Fi. This engine has sound. And it also has cab lighting. It also has ditch lights, front and rear lights with bell sounds, grade crossing sounds. It also has DCC controlled couplers, which allows me to use my handset to control uncoupling. I've created a video on how I installed it and how it works. So I will provide a link in the video so that you can see that. The remote control DCC coupler may be a fancy little feature, but it really enhances the operation because you can do it remotely. You do not have to reach in, and of course, you do not have people then wrecking your scenery on the way to reaching in. So it's very convenient. Next up are two gondolas that I also scratch built. Feature on one of these is that the gondola has a removable load. Using a magnet, I can remove the coal load. Here's a piece of steel nut, and you can place it. Next up is the boxcar. It's currently the only boxcar I have. More boxcars will be available. The interesting thing about this boxcar, it has also a sound module, and it provides an added dimension of operation because it allows you to set the brakes on this boxcar. Well, the boxcar brakes sound, not actual working brakes. There's no working brakes on this. But it does provide you with the sound of brakes and the clickety-clack of the wheels. And you can, with the wave of the same magnet, engage and disengage the sound, so that if you want to uncouple, you just wave the wand over it so that the sound does not continue as your locomotive is moving away. But as soon as the engine couples to the boxcar and you want to pull away the entire train, including the boxcar, you want to wave it again to engage it, to synchronize with your engine. So when the engine is moving, the boxcar clickety-clack is moving. So that's, I think that is a very cool feature. Last but not least is the only passenger car that I have. The passenger car is scratch built, and it has two passengers inside. The roof is removable. One of the things that I want to continue adding to the model railroad is electronics. Hopefully I don't create overcomplication, but it is a nice part of the hobby if you're interested in it. One thing that I like a lot is sound, and I have a Pricom sound device that allows me to play various sounds, including the background noise of the seagulls, crowd sound from my restaurant, church sounds, and for the passenger car, when it's stationed at the spur, the sound of doors opening and closing. So that's the sound. I intend to add more sound modules, like for example for the Bortoldi vinegar plant. It will have individuals working sounds. As you know, I have the Woodland Scenics lighting system to light up my buildings. I have sequencing hub, which turns the lights randomly on and off. I have regular light hub for street lamps and for the ground floor stores. As you can tell, I mount the hubs upside down because it's easier for me when I'm working underneath the model railroad to be able to unplug and plug the wires from underneath. So these are all the hubs that I have so far to run the lights that I have. This device controls the few turnouts that I have. It allows me to control them either on the panel here, which is probably the most common way of doing it. But because I have this connected to JMRI, I am also able to control the turnouts either through the handset here or on my cell phone. All the turnouts are controlled using these servo motors. In the future, we will be adding sensors to the track for block occupancy to allow me to add more animation and allow JMRI, the computer system, to detect the location of the trains and have a small amount of automatic train control, which would probably control one train while I do some switching of the freight. One of the aspects of the model railroad hobby that I enjoy is making my own things, including my own buildings and details such as pots and kitchen utensils. The other aspect that I've been learning how to do, continuing to practice and continuing to improve my skills, is the modeling of 1/24th scale figures. I like the challenge of making my own figures. I don't always succeed, but it's fun and it's a learning process. I have 18 individuals already modeled and plan on making some more. I am also exploring the idea of 3D printing my people. But here is a quick survey of the figures that I've built so far. I have these fishermen unloading a boat. I've got the railroad foreman. I got the train engineer. I've got a woman here resting after carrying buckets of water. A retired person walking his dog. Some people talking at the cafe. A waiter and a patron. A clerk of a store. Factory foreman. Two widows talking to each other after their meal. A priest after visiting the villagers at the top of the mountain. He's coming back down. He's coming down the stairs and he's going to be entering his boat. One of the other things is I poured this Mediterranean Sea and embedded fish. A school of fish. I've also modeled these two individuals at the water's edge. This is part of the module that I've attached to my current project that used to be an ON30 that I am retrofitting to become part of the GN15. Hopefully it will be a successful addition, but I still have a lot of planning and incorporation and some changes to make. This model railroad spans approximately 10 feet in this direction and another 10 feet in this direction. This module used to be an ON30 module that I began to convert to GN15 as an afterthought. I'm hoping that I can continue the village scene into this module. It is only 12 inches deep, so the jury's still out to see if I can successfully do it. I've already added a bridge, a half bridge, a cutaway bridge here, another bridge here crossing a river, and a footbridge up here. If I am able to design and be able to model the continuation of the village, I will. I plan on moving this storage device over this way and including a vineyard scene all in this corner. But that is a future project after this half of the model railroad is completed. In terms of future projects, I want to continue modeling this half of the model railroad. For example, I have some forced perspective buildings mock-ups right now up on the top of the mountain, and I plan on very shortly to model those and add lighting to them and see what other kinds of animation I can add to it to provide some life to it. This will be in a reduced scales to force the perspective, so it looks like this village continues on in the rear. I've also added a mirror already in one of the buildings to show that the model railroad continues on. I think it's been quite effective. It's one of my more popular videos, and I hope to add more mirrors around the layout to continue creating the illusion that the village is a lot bigger than it really is. With the advent of 3D printing, I am now able to design my own detailed parts. So I will be eventually replacing these downspouts on these buildings with new downspouts that look a little bit more convincing as piping that is joined in several places. So that'll be fun to retrofit those. I will be adding more people and tables and chairs to the outdoor restaurant scene. The restaurant inside would also be detailed. The fishmonger's place will also have detailed interior. After I complete that portion of the model railroad, I will be moving to this part. I have it already mocked up with buildings that will be converted into real models. This will have a working turntable to turn locomotives around. I am hoping to have at least another steam engine and maybe another diesel. This will be a road that goes up the mountain, a retaining wall. And of course, when that area is done, we will be moving on to hopefully following new designs of extending the village here as it transitions to a countryside scene and then eventually reaching a vineyard scene. I hope to incorporate more DCC controls. I'm going to look into the Blue Nami system that Soundtrax has recently issued to be able to run locomotives using my cell phone and not have to run it through JMRI. I think it'll be a lot easier to program the locomotives and operate the locomotives. Instead of hitting a lot of function keys on the DCC controller, you just are going to be able to just scroll to a button that's labeled cab lights, ditch lights, and any other feature like my automatic DCC couplers and uncouplers. I hope to be using Arduinos to do train detection so that I can run one train automatically while I am switching another train. So maybe I will have the passenger train run automatically and the freight train will be under my control. That's it, folks, for layout tour. Hope you enjoyed it. I am already working on other videos I hope to release soon. With that, thank you for your patience and watching my video. Thank you for visiting the little fishing village of Amalfitano. Please consider hitting the like button and subscribing. Until next time, arrivederci.